Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is
Corey Hall. Back again.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but Terry was supposed to be here, but
He'll be here eventually, I think.
Sure, well, yeah. Or he'll just like send a text at some point and be like, "Oh, sorry, something happened," and we'll just bitch at him forever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How dare you be a father?
Right. Anyways, I wanted to talk about a number of things, and we were just talking about it a little bit, but should we start on Trump or should we start on the failure thing?
I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. Let's start on the failure thing because I feel like it ties into that.
I think it does.
Eventually.
Actually. That's a good one.
Yeah. Conversation I've been wanting to have for a while is why are Americans so bad at failing? And then more specifically, at least as far as what the media is telling us, young white men so bad at failing.
Sure.
And we can see this through opiate addiction, suicides, the rise of the incel as the major villain in media as opposed to the terrorist now. So I guess I'll give one reason why I think, and then we'll just like keep going. But it feels like American culture, the root of like the American dream is to, you can start from nothing, and then if you work hard enough and you put in the hours, you'll eventually realize the American dream and you'll become as rich as Bill Gates or whatever if you just keep working hard.
Sure.
And that lie has sort of kept going for so long, and now that the economy has sort of turned against the normal folks, they're like, wait, I thought I was doing everything right, but like, here comes 2008, and then
you're not getting the rewards,
and then here comes more automation, job loss, and all of the other shit.
Everything builds into itself, and it's just like nothing is working like it's supposed to if this system has any credibility or legitimacy. But
lucky for us, we have a huge number of prescriptions for opiates to help dull the pain.
Oh hell yeah, pill for
that'll
everything.
Be great. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think the central reason is that enough things have changed, and I'm sure we'll go into this in detail, but enough of the underlying reasons why we do things or ways in which we do things have changed, that kind of behaving as if it was 40 years ago literally doesn't work anymore. I'd push back in that the American dream was never real. I mean, that's fashionable now because it's obviously not true currently. Looking at people moving from the bottom quintile to the top quintile is at the lowest that it's been in the past 100 years, and the amount of inequality we've got is probably the most unequal society that's ever existed. So I mean, it's very difficult to look at that and then to look back like 50 years ago when everything was bright and sunny and be like, you were so full of shit. How dare you? And it's
why haven't we had a revolution yet?
Right.
Like so many revolutions have happened.
Exactly. The past is a foreign country. And so when you go back to that, it seems like they should have known better. But I think that it was true in a lot of ways then. I mean, there's always been the thing about America being as new of a country as it is we've always had a place for grifters because there's always the frontier out there that you can whatever. And so, you're right in the extent that, everybody could be as rich as Bill Gates. Everybody can be, whatever. That's never been true. But I think in a relative way that there has been a lot more mobility here. And through a lot of decisions we made over the past 50 years, we don't anymore.
Yeah.
And the whole of the public has caught up to that fact.
Yeah.
And the in many ways, the sharpest end of that has fallen on men under the age of 40. And that feeds into the failure thing.
Yeah.
Men tend to fall more on the extremes if you're looking at standard distributions of stuff. There's more inordinately tall men. There's more midgets. There's more geniuses. There's more men that are mentally deficient. And we also tend to, studies have shown that we tend to care about men in aggregate less than, and so there's it's much easier to fall further as a man than it is as a woman.
Yeah.
And you can see this. Okay. You can see this. One of the biggest ones, and this feeds directly into this kind of sense of failure, especially economically, is education rates, educational attainment. But we've got whole industries geared towards making sure that the women can go to get an education, especially college level education, and women have been the majority on college campuses for like 40 years now. So part of that is deliberate policy. Part of that is that for a guy who didn't have a college degree, it was possible to have a middle class lifestyle, and that has completely evaporated. So you're kind of hit on both sides in that regard.
And then if you do get a college degree, then you have ridiculous debt.
Well, right, and if you don't choose something that's really immediately lucrative, then you have to pay that off, and then you've got also the failure as well. It's everything bleeds into itself in that. It'd be very difficult to pick one thing and be like, if we only fix this. It's definitely a gestalt series of problems that we have.
Good use of vocab word there.
Thank you. Picking up my 25-cent words as they come along. It's and it. I think the internet plays a big role in this as well, because all of this gets networked.
Yeah.
That a failure back in the 60s might have even resulted in suicide. But aside from the family, no one else would really know.
Right. They would just sort of quietly die.
Right.
And then
And for here you've got you've got potentially millions of very frustrated men all talking to each other and amplifying, all of this. And I think that's where the whole incel craze comes from. I don't even think it came from themselves. I think it was anytime large numbers of young men get angry about something, everybody else pays attention in kind of an oh shit type of way. And they might not have paid attention to it before. So this oh shit is literally their introduction to, this might have, 12 years of legitimate grievances behind it, but nobody pays attention to that until it's an emergency. And now we've got to do something mostly to make the anger go away because it's potentially dangerous. And
how would you describe like a textbook incel?
Well, a textbook incel is someone who, for whatever reason, isn't able to successfully navigate all of the social milieu that we've got currently. There's it doesn't have to be somebody, like the sexually entitled, ugly, balding, pimply face, basement dwelling, overweight, whatever. It's just because there's a lot of facets that go into that. Part of that, honestly, is again how networked meeting people is nowadays. There's a thing, I think I brought this up in the first podcast I did with you, actually, called the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
That if you let something go, any process go without any regulation on it, you generally get logarithmic functions in the output. That like the top 20% of your output is responsible for as much as 80% of that output. And you see this with like salesmen, where the top 20% are making almost all of your sales calls because they really enjoy it and they're good at it and they get into flow and all of that. If you're like one of the bottom 20% salesmen, you might only be getting like 5% of the sales.
Right.
Well, now if you try and port that over, it's not a 1-for-1, but if you port that over to, like finding people online, it's not just online dating, but it's finding anyone.
Sure.
That there is kind of a G factor for being able to, translate personality into being on the phone. Right. And then finding people that you want to hang out with in real life off of that. And if you're not very well set up to do that, and this is very, very recent. So these are people that in other, for most of our history might have been okay, because you can deal with a little bit of weirdness when you've got a good friend group and everybody fits. But when you're going from some place of atomization, you're having to make your own friend group work. If you're on that low 20%, then you can be very, very isolated from a very young age. And then you're deficient for every year following that. So
Yeah.
you're not just, it's not just,
and you become more deficient.
exactly, because then you're not making the type of easy mistakes that you're supposed to make when you're a young person, so you can understand how to like people when you're when you're older. And so then that just kind of bleeds into everything. And again, because men tend to have a wider have a wider distribution than women do, you've got a larger tail of men on that left side of socialization anyways.
Yeah.
And so you've basically, without meaning to, created a terrifyingly large minority of men that might not have a lot of socialization at all.
Yeah. Actually, I have a thought and a hypothesis that I kind of talked about, or I talked to Sable about this, that it seems like for a long time, the cards have been stacked against the unattractive male.
Yeah.
For like, since feminism kept moving forward.
Right.
And so like, oh, look, divorce is legal now. And so all of the women that were like, oh, I had to settle for this guy just because money. And then those men were like, ah, shit, now I've got no one.
Right.
And then you get like, hey, we should probably talk about sexual assault. And then you have like all of those men who are like, dang it, the only way I was getting lucky was by assaulting women.
Sure.
And now I can't do that.
Right.
And then now we have online dating, which is like literally a selection process.
Right. Well, it's funny that OkCupid published their data, I think it was like 5 years ago. They got a lot of flack for this. And it was the women on the site rated almost 80% of the male user base as less than averagely attractive.
Yeah.
And that's shocking on its face, but it's also like that 80% pops up in a lot of places.
Yeah,
and every time you network something, you basically create a logarithmic curve, which is great if your output isn't human beings who have their own independent likes and wants. Like if it's just like Amazon packaging, then sure, logarithmic away, next day delivery relies on that.
Yeah.
But when it's somebody who 100 years ago might have had a okay enough relationship and now has none, for people who can make that networking win, life has never been better because you're only another swipe away from an adventure.
Yeah.
But it is a minority of people who can do that. And the costs associated for, society as a whole for the people on the left end of the distribution are growing. And because American society is basically excessively mediaized, the only way we can talk about this in a national level is, oh my God, incel revolt. And then it's left to people like podcasts to go through and talk with the context and everything. But that's my thoughts on that is specifically for incel, because it's kind of morbidly funny.
Yeah,
it really is. It's kind of morbidly funny. So that becomes kind of the stand-in meme idea for this. But I think it really is. It's the effect of the networkization of American society, and in pretty much all facets of it. That if you're good at networking, you're probably better at getting a job, retaining a job, having finances, having lots of friends, having lots of romantic success, and then also realizing that success at networking is not evenly distributed. People who are taller tend to have an easier time. People who have just a whole bevy of physical characteristics that are mostly outside of their control. Like obviously, fit people do better than non-fit people. But height has a big thing to deal with it. There is some variation by race that people have pulled out that is persistent throughout large. And so I'm not trying to blame like racism, but there is kind of some validity to the idea that you can't take two people and just tell them the exact same thing, and you can't. It's that
we're not at the point yet in society where we are completely blind to race.
Well, sure, I mean, maybe we won't ever be, but it's the when you deal with all of these things and you try and make it work over the course of about 20 years, which is really a generation and a half, then when people are making bad decisions, non-optimal decisions from a networking type of thing, and it's mostly because they don't know or they physically can't, you have to make accounts for that. And we haven't yet because the pace of change has been so rapid.
Right.
We've gone from Nokia phones to Tinder in the space of one generation.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can plan for that.
Yeah. Well, big bucks to the person who invents the incel dating site.
Well, right. You know, I mean, there's really no way to do it without slaughtering a lot of sacred cows.
Right.
Because it is true. I mean, you know, there were a lot of women for most of history that were in relationships that that would not have been their first choice because they needed them for security. You know, we've solved the security problem to the extent that women don't need men for that to a large degree. And I mean, like, you know, the whole of the welfare state is the biggest thing. And this is not a polemic against that, by the way. I'm not saying that, like, you know, oh, we need to take it. I'm just saying that changes everything. And so, you know, it may be a good problem to have, you know, because it prevents the whole, like, you know, starving women and orphans on the street type thing. So, you know, it's this might be a better class of problem, but it is something that needs to be solved in its turn, because then what do you do with the guys who can't compete just based on, like, attraction or arousal alone? I don't know. Yeah. But that's where it's at. And it's also, it gets back to the problem that on average we care less about men than about women. So, you know, how do you ethically care for guys who, partially through their own fault and partially don't elicit a whole lot of sympathy? Yeah, I don't know. You know, and that's a function of the way that we evolved. Right. You know, you're really fighting evolution at this point. You know, we've beaten the game so hard that you're running up against the limits of the way your own brain, you know, created itself. Right. Well,
in a weird way, kind of what's happening is that the very things that sort of created this type of person is also the things that are trying to tell that person how to fix it. And so it's like, well, right, like pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Why don't you, like, get a makeover and start working out, dude? Sure. And it's like, I'm already bad at those things. That's why I'm here. Right.
And all of those things are easier when you already have a community around you to, you know, help you with that and hold you accountable in a nice way. And not, you know, but when you've atomized society to the extent that we have now, and again, that wasn't planned. It was just, you know, society or community, you know, because like society is like, you know, we live in a society, bottom text, like stuff like the word doesn't even mean what it does, because it's, but genuine community comes from need, first and foremost. And so, if you can get, you know, all of your basic, like your bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs from, you know, a big box store, or maybe from, you know, being delivered to your doorstep, and you don't even require human interaction to, you know, basic to get that, it becomes a lot harder to build that. The average number of friends that any American has over the past 40 years has dropped. You know, the average number of good friends that the average American man has is about one. Because there's not just the amount of changes that America's gone through over the past 40 years has hollowed out the ways and the whys that American men used to build their communities, literally like actually build their communities around. And I think that's a tragedy. I really do. Even for guys who have been able to make the jump to, you know, using networking effectively, because there is still something of a shallowness to purely networked. You know, the happy medium would be having an organic community that you can then supercharge through networked effects. Right. But we haven't done that. We've hollowed out the old, and we've only got this networking. And I think, you know, I mean, the fact that so many people are talking about this means that I'm confident that this will get solved. You know, you can't go back. I don't want to recreate or retreat back to the past here. Right. But people don't change that much. You know, the human nature being what it is, I think that there's going to be some syncretism that comes back. At least I hope there will be. And so I'm confident that it'll get fixed. Problems can go on a lot longer than you think. Yeah. And it doesn't help an individual who's being, you know, deleteriously affected by this in the meantime, when you're talking about, like, oh, in the future it'll be, you know, because it's in the future we're dead anyways. Yeah. Well,
and in the meantime, you are still getting
more
of these type of people. And so and the the fact that, like, the media isn't helping by being like, hey, the villain is no longer a terrorist. It's the incel that
Right.
could be lurking everywhere.
That's below in the basement. Maybe
and
next
so,
door. Right.
Yeah, like the fact that Joker, and we already said we live in a society, so that the meme has happened.
Right. Yeah.
But like the fact that Joker has gone from a terrorist to a incel, essentially, like you were saying, is the. I mean, and I've been seeing this example too in other media. Not longer ago than when incel started being a thing, but like I've seen anime villains start to be like that type of person instead of like a power seeking egomaniac.
Right.
It becomes like you guys owe me this sort of thing.
I
So
got you.
The main villain in season 2 of Sword Art Online, I think, was that, and then the villain in Demon Slayer.
Well, it's a lot harder to not be, I guess, not entitled, but not like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. If you wanted to do bad things, that idea had to basically come from you or your immediate family. Nowadays, it's very difficult to not know what the winners are like.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what winning looks like, even if they can't have it. That's the downside of the networked effect. You can find the thing that you want, whether it's like a bunch of sex, very easy to get, or a bunch of money, or a bunch of independence, or a bunch of whatever. And there is in your pocket a supercomputer that can provide very high definition audio and video, whether it's fake or not, of that potential thing. And so, how much of that is entitlement? Because again, a lot of these people are very, very young. I would hate to accidentally become a incel meme at 17, trying to go through, whatever, because I would have hated 17-year-old me as 27-year-old me. I think most people would have.
Yeah.
So if I was having, like difficulties, like that, then that might come across as entitlement, and it might just be you're not actually making the jump. But I also think there is some validity to that there is a lot of actual entitlement. But I think one of the roots of that, aside from just human nature wanting what it wants and wanting to expend the least amount of effort to get that, is that you don't have to expend a lot of effort to see people getting at least a facsimile of exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And so then if the and potentially not having to expend a lot to get it. And a good example of this is just being a young man. You get exposed to a lot of like pickup artistry type stuff online just by swimming through it, because like young men want sex, and so that's a very active topic of conversation. And I see a lot of guys. I say a lot. I see there's a very vocal minority, at least. There's a lot of messaging around, like Dan Bilzerian, as an example.
I don't know that.
He's so-called king of Instagram. He's very hugely muscled guy who always has like an actual harem of top tier women around him. He's very active in social media. He's an out and out playboy, basically. And he's he's basically this like mythical role model for guys who want to be jack tan, don't have to work for a living because he's just made so much money and just has women everywhere. And what's needs to be understood is that he didn't make that money. His dad did. His dad's a venture capitalist, and so he had $100 million when he came of age. And a lot of the women are legitimately paid to be there. Like it's kind of horrifying the number of women that are actual porn stars that he like buys for a day to be in his Instagram stories, and then like goes back to whatever they do. It's like that's not realistic in the slightest. But that doesn't stop your hindbrain from being like, that is an enormous amount of ass surrounding this man. Like, that's not fair. And so that's what I mean by network effect, is that it doesn't take very many of those guys at all until you're full up on your 80% output. And there is a far larger number of men who, and there's always been inequality like that. I mean, Hugh Hefner existed 60 years ago, for God's
Yeah.
sake, but he had to have an entire Prince empire behind him to get a percentage of what Dan Bilzerian is able to do
Right.
with smartphones.
Well, and that also kind of goes back to the American dream thing, that like the self-made man is kind of a myth anyways, that like
Sure, the
a lot
completely
of
self-made man. But
yeah,
I mean,
a lot of those people were like, oh, funded by some big lump sum of money
right,
somewhere or
small loan of
another.
$1 million.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, that's what I mean about the huckster part of it is, like anyway, Johnny, anyone can be like,
Exactly.
Everybody knows exactly what that hucksterism sounds like, because it's always been a part of America.
Right.
And yet at one point we did have an enormous amount of social mobility and the legitimately highest quality standard of living in the world, and very strong and very happy communities in which the average American was very content, if not outright happy, with the way things were going. And we don't have that. And I think that, that's another root part of it as well, is that, we're every generation past the boomers are poorer than the boomers. Gen X might be on parity at this point, but millennials probably won't be. Zoomers probably won't. I mean, it's literally at the point now that it's like, you're probably not going to have less active wealth. And that's, because the United States became, excessively corporatist 40 years ago. But that affects men a lot harder than it does women. Right. Because, like if the woman makes more than the man, then you're at a much higher risk of divorce. It's like asking a woman to marry a guy who makes less than her is like asking a woman to marry a guy who's like shorter than her. It doesn't matter how much egalitarianism she wants. Her hindbrain evolved in a particular. That's what I mean. We beat the game so hard.
Looked at the data.
We
that's
beat
what it
the
says.
game so hard that we're fighting our own evolution at this point. Yeah, we've gotten to a point where you don't have to, and that's. I mean, I think that's part of the reason that there's so much depression in first world countries. If you look at the third world, when I was in Africa, depression is not as widely known there, because they have third world person shit to do all the time. And it might not even
shit to do makes you happy.
It might not even be productive stuff, but it's constant and it's community based. Yeah. And that might not make you happy, but that does at least make you content, or at least it keeps you out of your like your like super ego or ego or whatever the fuck Freud called it. But you know what I mean? Yeah. That part enough that you don't fall into. So I mean, partially depression is that you can kind of afford to do it. And I understand how ironic that is, that I'm noting on one hand that we're losing generational wealth on 5 minutes before I talk about, being still wealthy enough to have depression. So I mean, but I think it's both, because there's a degree of status that people, and men in particular, need to be psychologically healthy, and then to translate that into, kind of performing well enough to do well societally. Right. And for a lot of different facets, this drive for equality, and the fact that it's very difficult to turn off drives for equality once parity has been established. Try and go to a college and be like, hey, we need to pare back on the number of women only grants being made. Like you're a misogynist. You hate women. And when you point out, it's like, well, like women have been the majority of college students for 37 years now. That doesn't matter as much. And then of course you've got the whole like, well, women were held down, forever. So now it's like, vengeance or whatever. And I can see where that's coming from, but it's like, okay, now we're not talking about equality. And if you complain about any of this, you're an incel anyways, because incel is funny. And any talk about this just becomes so, because in aggregate, people care about men less than women. And so when you talk about all this milieu, dancing all together and crashing all together, it becomes very, confusing to talk about, and very, it's difficult to really pull off the empathy necessary to deal with this as an actual problem needing to be solved. And men, again, due to evolution, when they're sad long enough, it turns into anger. Yeah. And so you have a large number of sad, if not despondent, young men who know for a fact, their phone tells them that they're missing all of these markers that they feel that they should get, or they see other people getting and getting the rewards, sometimes outsized rewards from them, and they know that they're not getting it, and they might not have a chance to get it, and that eventually turns to anger, and that's where, you know, you've got your like Joker style incels come from. So, I mean, to wrap all that up, I think the reason that that men are failing as hard as they are is because we have replaced the ways that men had set society up specifically to make sure that the most number of them could succeed with a networked egalitarian system that, due to human nature, egalitarianism does not very well sit with men who fail their burden of performance, that you've got a much lower floor to fall from.
No, we can look at that data through like it's not even, hunter-gatherers.
It's not even America
type
either.
Stuff.
It's like you're seeing a bifurcation. Like I think Norway has the best social safety net in the world at this point. You know, like it's really difficult to fail to the point of like homelessness in Norway, even if you do have a mental illness, because they're high trust society full of Norwegians who feel kinship with each other, and it's very, very nice. But they have egalitized their society to the point where there's a growing number of Norwegian men who can't find women who want to have their children. Because if you are a Norwegian man with kids, you are more likely to have kids. You're almost more likely to have kids with a separate woman because you're a proven commodity. Than you are another man. Because that's not the way we evolved. I'm not saying that isn't the way to go in the future.
Put a pause on that. Okay. Because Terry's here.
Gotcha.
I wanted to touch on the notion of entitlement because it kind of goes a little ways outside of, since we were talking so much about the sphere of like white men, but even so much wider is just this notion of entitlement.
These goddamn millennials.
Exactly. We're just
Generation Z now.
Well, I mean,
No, I know.
we can dunk on the Zoomers because none of them are here to defend themselves. But like, you know, that's the main.
Although I'm right on that line.
You are. When it's 96.
95. I was born on 95.
Well, you are then.
Yeah.
You are. Okay.
I'm right on that line.
Far from
I'm barely a millennial.
We have a Zoomer. No, I think that actually does make you.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I've seen different things that like
it's 94
put
to
the line.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so it's like somewhere in there. Either way, I'm entitled in some way.
I'm sure.
But yeah, and we see this a lot with like, again, you were talking about how like, in colleges, there's a lot more women and stuff. Well, we see that in college too, where people are like, well, shouldn't you be giving me this grade, or shouldn't I be like, I deserve so much more of this. I remember a specific speech that some black girl gave at a college talking about like,
How
reparations or something like that.
Right.
And it's like, no, because you did this to like our ancestors, I deserve this.
Right.
It's
like
like
no,
that.
I didn't fucking. I'm adopted. I don't even know if my ancestors were here.
Yeah.
When like no, but yeah, I understand. I mean, the last thought I have on this before we turn over to Terry, because I got to do his thing, is I think that as well is a function of how atomized we are. People don't do that if they have kind of a coming of age group where they're really grounded and they know where they are and they know where they come from. Like that's almost a mental tantrum trying to figure out where the boundaries are.
Yeah.
That's I say almost because that's too facile to say that, like, oh, we'll just discipline them and they'll not, because that's not what I'm saying either. But it is like, you know, when you have something like that and you have this outright sense of entitlement, it might not even be, in some cases it is, you know, like we've supercharged our assholes in this country. But I think a large part of it is just everybody acts like they're a single child, because a lot of the way we socialize is coming from a place of just being alone and having to make plans, and that socialization might include other people, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And that's so novel that it makes people act very strangely, but they're still people. So if you like allow people to be dickish on a long enough timeline, they will be.
Yeah.
And then of course, you know, dickishness gets attention. And so in kind of a networked fashion, the most dickish people end up majoritizing that.
Yeah.
And it just,
Hey, look, we made our way back to Trump.
That's a large part of that. And it just snowballs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll
You can say words. You don't have to just like.
I didn't want to like
just nodding
derail
sagely.
his
No, I like the moral
train of thought.
support. You can do it.
No, actually, I was going to say you may have already covered this before I managed to show up more than fashionably late, but there's also kind of you could simplify it to be cyclical nature to the way these things are kind of moving between generations, in the sense that a lot of the people who are really hard into the like socialism and like blah, 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 everything that you want to stereotype
it took
about.
Terry 90 seconds to mention socialism.
Well, entitlement, that's usually, that's why I was saying, like, whatever you want to do for the stereotypes with that. A lot of that is coming from people who were just old enough to remember all of the BS that was coming from like Bush and just all of the stuff that people like to meme about Bush sucking.
Sure.
And you're moving forward, and now with the Generation Z crowd, they have pushed back really significantly on the, I guess, ratio of them that are really okay with kind of where we are as millennials, and even where I guess probably a lot of Gen Xers are.
We'll see where that goes as they really start entering the workforce.
Well, I mean, where they're at right now, they're already head and shoulders above millennials, and typically with no exceptions
I
so
agree.
far.
The only thing that I would push back against that is that
They're at about the half and half point,
No,
whereas
I'm
our
not
generation
arguing
is
that.
like 80, almost 90%.
I don't think it's that high either. I mean, well, one, if it, I don't.
It
I
depends
don't
on
think
how you
our-
want to split
I don't
the
think our
numbers.
current status quo, especially economic, is benefiting the majority of people. And so,
Yeah, I could agree with
if you phrase the argument as like, well, either you love, like neoliberal corporate economics, or you're a socialist.
That's
There's
not
going to be
even-
enough people that are going to be like, well, fuck it, I guess I'm a socialist then.
Well,
because I'm
that's not
like,
even what I'm talking about. There's actually, it has more to do with self-described political labels than like particular economic like positions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like the percentage of people in, I guess if you want to go with the label of Gen X for yourself,
I'll just flip back and
Right.
forth whenever necessary.
You're more of an outlier for Gen X, and we are a bit more of an outlier for millennials as far as like positions that we hold. Probably me more so than you, but depending on how you want to split that hair.
I guess. I'm definitely fairly dissident at this point when it comes to most of the status quo.
Yeah.
I just don't fall in line with the majority of how they want to replace it. That's the biggest difference.
We're both, I guess, probably more equally so. Just kind of prioritize different things.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a bit
Right.
tangential.
Did I mention that this is Terry? Did we say that out loud?
I don't think we did.
Okay, hey, this is Terry.
I'm a returning veteran to the
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
How many times have you been on the?
2 or 3.
Okay.
I think maybe 4.
Oh, really?
Both of you, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because there was one other where we were both in it.
I don't,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't, okay. So
That
maybe-
was
maybe
like-
so.
Yeah, we
In
talked
my
about like
living
how we
room.
grew up and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that now. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Okay.
How like we did backstory on Terry, and it's like, how are you not a bleeding socialist?
Right.
right.
Right. So,
And then
anyway.
things got worse. And then,
Yeah.
right. So yeah.
Yes. So much more. Anyway. But yeah, the numbers suggest that Gen Z is leaning more so towards moderate and Republican than towards Democrat by a pretty alarming margin compared to where millennials started.
The fun part about being kind of dissident is I get to dunk on both sides. There's just because you're Republican
I
does
agree.
not mean you're not entitled. Or
Oh,
don't have a
no.
lot
Yeah.
of
My
entitled,
favorite
like-
meme in the world is making fun of boomers for being like, you dirty communists. And it's like, all right, but let's have the discussion about that Social Security, though.
Yeah.
And then it's like
It's like,
communist anthem going. It's like, okay.
Well,
okay.
I mean, part of it is again, this gets back to what I was talking about, like Norway as an example, because they are very homogenous, very high performing, very high social trust. All else being equal, things like Social Security to take care of people in an industrial or post-industrial way are just straight good ideas because the way that we live currently is we live in a bubble. we discovered that fossil fuels burn real good, and nothing was the same. So you can't structure society like it would, but
I'm sensing a little bias here.
Well, what
you work in solar panels. So.
Well, no, because fossil fuels are great in the extent that we can't replace them yet.
Right,
and I don't want them to go away.
Option.
Right. But you're right. You've got a point. But I mean, it's
Mister, I wanted to start a business where I was just planting trees, and now there's actually a company doing that.
No, there is. I wasn't able to make it work.
You didn't have the money
so I sold
for
it back. Yeah. But no, like even then. All else is never equal.
Yeah.
And so is that really an entitlement if you choose as a society to, like collectively to do that, hey, we're going to support each other? Because it's called entitlement spending, and they do have kind of a point.
Definitionally, I think, yes.
Sure. But is that entitlement from an interpersonal standpoint? I get basically the point of all this is I get kind of tired of people talking about entitlement, and it immediately moves to like federal spending.
Sure.
Because we're not going to use Social Security. All of us here are young enough that's probably not going to exist. And yet there might be some type of like interpersonal, entitlement that happens. It's just, it's such a complex word that, all three of us went off on separate culturally and politically relevant things, germane to the United States, and it's all the same word just kind of wrapped up into it. So I don't really know. I mean, I think in some ways millennials and zoomers have made virtue of necessity, and they're much less entitled than Gen X or boomers, because there's less stuff, there's more debt associated with the things that they do.
I think it's largely that both groups are just a pushback to whatever the political
that's it as
establishment
well. You've got
which is what I was getting at with the Zoomer thing.
Was it fucking like Plato back in the day that he was like, the youth of today have no respect for their elders and they just sleep in all day like that?
Okay, boomer.
Well, exactly. It's like, and Zeus spake, go back to bed, boomer. And it was because that is always, I would like to get so successful in my life that I can dunk on my children that way 20 years from now. That's how I know I've made it. But that is always going to be there in some respects. I think that the way in which that maybe being normally teenager level entitled is more or less harmful or annoying societally, depending on how fragile or in what way society is fragile at this present moment. But in that case, the interesting question to ask is what's different now compared to last generation, and not why are these goddamn kids acting like teenagers?
Well, one of the biggest differences that's defining between us and the generation following us is they largely don't know what a world without the internet looks like.
Right.
We are that weird balancing point between knowing what the hell a VHS is and then knowing that Netflix is like revolutionized,
Listen to the episodes with Reese Carman, though. We touched on that.
I did. I didn't listen all the way through, but I did. That was actually really interesting. Yes.
But yeah, no. And I think that this is like the basic form of the conversation, but like we also grew up in an environment that told us all of the lies of like, I was able to be told like, hey, you can do whatever you want. And like, you can,
I don't even know that it's fair to call that a lie though. Cause like realistically, that's more of just an outdated truism from like, a long
like
gone,
our parents weren't lying, they just were misinformed about the
pattern the pattern to success that they grew up with just stopped being useful, is all it is.
But they also created the environment that was like, people always say like, oh, the millennials like grew up with participation trophies. Like, we didn't put that policy in place.
Right.
No
8-year-old baseball team decides that everybody gets a trophy.
Arguably, the greatest generation handed that down to the boomers. So,
well, right. You can do the whole fathers and sons theory cycle.
Some of the biggest stuff that kicked that off, though, I would argue came from that transition.
How much of that is just the post-war bubble America was in just kind of naturally ending due to a lot of different reasons, and were nobody actually preparing for that. Like literally no one from federal level down to personal level actually preparing for that to not just be the new normal forever. I don't know, but I mean, that's, it's, I don't want to take away from personal responsibility here.
Right.
But when you're dealing,
we're going to touch on that.
When you're dealing with systems that are that large and move that slowly, but have that much force behind them,
momentum.
I also think it I think it cruel even to just put one's own grit or personal responsibility by that and just do the whole, like bootstrap yourself type stuff, because it is possible, I guess, to bootstrap yourself when you've got a whole lot of implicit stuff behind you, where, if you fail, it's not catastrophic. And if you succeed, then you've got momentum for the rewards just immediately take off. And it should be, I believe, the goal of any community to try and build that for their children. Does that give them a sense of entitlement? I think if things are going well, that question never really even arises, because your kids just go on to be successful. And then when that cycle runs out and it starts to not work anymore, and the kids are like, but the previous generation, and it's like, no, don't be entitled. It's like, no, clearly there have been a lot of systemic failures here. And if you're able to make it work anyways, then we should, reward you for your personal responsibility. But when it doesn't, that's not that, maybe your personal failure, maybe that is a personal failing, but I think it would go back to being cruel if you just held that as that was all that is.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes the world sucks and you just gotta fucking deal with it.
And sometimes it goes cyclical, where, previous successes come with costs that you have to be paid later. So that, it doesn't even have to be somebody's failing or somebody's malice that causes the previous system to not work anymore.
But how many of those failures does it take before the system that's there to be a cushion can't support it anymore?
Well, that's the, I mean, I don't think anybody's able to know that.
The economic free rider question.
Well, right. And I think the whole, especially the first half of the cohort of the millennial generation, the question that they would answer is it only takes one large enough, crisis to do that, of which it was its own bevy of millions of bad decisions that were made that all added up into one.
Well, some of those things I would argue is part of the driving factor towards what's caused the crowd and the Zoomers to move a little bit more to the right, though. Like, they saw all of the dumb crap that was pushed out through Obama's like bailouts and crap, and
Bush's bailouts too.
Well, yeah, no, his too. I'm not defending Bush.
Well, no, right? Nobody can.
Don't worry. But like the stuff that they're going to be more likely to remember, though, would have come from Obama. Just because of timing.
You're right. There
Which
is a generational cycle to this. That when you're, I'm intentionally trying to speak impersonally, because it's larger than just like, oh, fucking Obama, however much,
Obama.
Right. However much decision-making process he might've had, if not that, but it's these types of problems I think would have happened regardless of who was in the White House.
Well, I think there are some people you could put there that would make things better, but not because they'd want them to.
Maybe so.
I'm
that kind of dovetails into the second question.
But real quick, before we get too far into that, Terry, what's your, I guess, hypothesis? Why are people bad at failing in America?
I mean, in a lot of places, I'd say people are bad at failing. It's anyway.
Right. Well, I'm talking about America because we have a better context for that.
Because we have not created Ancapistan yet.
I think the question is poorly constructed, because you're kind of generalizing America, across the board, where I'd say that there are different places in the country where it's significantly worse versus, not so bad.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Now answer the damn question.
Well, I'm saying it's not as simple as just saying because X.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking about it for 30 minutes.
Right.
It's not like...
I think it kind of depends on, I guess, the subculture that you're looking at in America. So like in Oklahoma, there's a lot of, if you fail, then that means you either begin selling or doing meth,
Yeah.
And it just kind of...
Our social safety net is needles.
You have to have
in many cases, yeah.
You have to have, I guess, the knowledge of what to do from where you come back from. Like, so if you're trying to start a business, right, and it falls apart, if you come from a family of addicts, you probably don't have a clue what it looks like to try to climb back up from there. And it's not even a question of having like monetary resources so much as just not having the knowledge. Because realistically,
you for adding that level of nuance.
Yeah. So like realistically, someone who's from that kind of background knows exactly how to go out and get a whole lot of money really quickly if they don't get caught. But then what do you do with it from there? And plus, at that point, you've already dug yourself into, a sort of hole that you might not even be able to come back out of once you
just wait until they legalize it, and then it's fine. You just go legit.
Well, and then you end up with cartels, firebombing, what was it, 8, 9 children?
Mexico's doing fine.
There you go. Anyway, but yeah, so I think a lot of it just comes down to certain areas not having, the right answer for what to do from, square one or,
0.
the, square -5 or whatever. And the trouble with that isn't that, people can't know what to do from there. It's that it's not the same for everyone, and it's not the same in every place. So you starting up a tech company in some states is laughable, but in other states it's quite a bit more achievable. For example, so it's just there are too many variables, and not enough people that I would even say are smart enough to be able to try to like reasonably pursue going after it, because if you look at a lot of the people who do make it big, they either get incredibly lucky or they are very smart and
or they were funded by lots of millions of dollars through either rich investors or their parents.
You mean that I can't get a small loan of $1 million?
We both referenced it. That's hilarious. I love that. I think part of it also, and this will be my last comment on this, and I'll let you start for a second question, so I don't just monopolize.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I think also part of it is that losing didn't hurt so much status wise previously. That it was still possible for a guy who. Because I don't even think most incels, to get back to the original, the premise, are potentially completely unemployed.
Sure.
It just might be that they don't have it. They're retail workers, or or they're guys who they're roofers on the off season,
right?
Or they have any type of job that is not high status and might be relatively high work and
continues to tell them that they're the worst of the worst,
right? And it doesn't.
What does that have to do with being an incel?
Doesn't really have a whole lot of doesn't really have a whole lot of money. Definitely doesn't have a whole lot of status. Previously their society was specifically set up to make sure that he got some benefit from it. I've even heard it say that they got like participation trophy wives. And that was kind of a barb against boomers. It was like, you all get participation trophies, and it was like, no, you don't understand how much this was set up. And it specifically was. And so now that we haven't done that, in many cases, women are actually more free now than they have ever been in human society.
I don't think anybody could argue against that.
I'm not making a moral judgment on this. It's like I'm not saying if we just would repeal the 19th Amendment, all of this would go away. That's not what I'm saying.
I have unironically seen a lot of conservative women.
Again, network effect. You will always find always.
It
but
was a lot.
when you
snails for salt.
Right. When you have
I'll
that,
explain it later.
We haven't come up with ways to get around that yet.
Yeah.
And so it's just them on their own, literally on their own a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And that just snowballs from there.
Right. Let's touch on and not get touched by Trump first before we get to the solutions of things. Why is there still such a rabid following for Trump?
Because he's big. Because he's big red tribe man, and he makes big blue tribe people mad.
Yeah,
so red tribe people happy when blue tribe people.
He's also charismatic, which no matter what you think about the policies that a politician suggests, charisma takes you most of the way. I mean, look at Obama. Like he was charisma incarnate.
Right.
And
he I think he genuinely did believe the things he was saying on the campaign trail. It's just that once he got there,
he's also a politician. It's going to be really difficult
at this
for
point,
you
I
to
don't believe that any of them believe anything.
Yeah.
While they I'm just like none of you get
that's
the benefit.
a really hard
none
sell.
Of you get the benefit of the doubt at this point.
Like even the ones that I'm partial to.
Yeah, basically. And I think also that's a large part of the reason why he's still got so much of a following is people that don't like him. They view all of these things that are clearly bullshit, and they're like, they go to supporters and they're like, how can you and for them it like, you know, people say it's, you know, Trump inaugurated, you know, post-truth politics in this country. He didn't. He is a symptom of most of the country realizing that post-truth politics is the way that we've been for a while, and we're just wanting to throw a grenade into it. You know, so and the fact that he won, you know, he was an insurgent campaigner. The GOP didn't want him. He won anyways.
I voted against him.
The Democrats didn't want him. He won anyways. And so he's the never Trumpers and the GOPers, the real conservatives are just as much focuses of you know, Red Tribe, the MAGA insurgency's ire as anyone else. And so I think that the support for him is not nearly as rabid as it was. I mean, you know, if you listen to what he was saying on the campaign, you know, that he was going to deport millions of people and the wall was going to get built with an executive order immediately, and you know, Muslim ban and all of that. Part of that is the media, because our corporate media is basically just propaganda, and it doesn't matter what side that's on. Fox News can die in a fire just as soon as MSNBC can. So, you know, part of that was that. Part of it is that it was a legitimate win for people who, with a lot of justification, believe that they have not had any representation in several decades. It's very difficult to make people go back on that.
There have been a significant number of people who flipped teams to vote for Trump, who previously had been voting Democrat for a very long time. So yeah, and I think that's in part where you're getting the Never Trumper crowd, though, is because the Never Trump crowd sees all of these, you know, previous blue voters who are, you know, coming in and saying, "Hey, I'm a vote for that guy."
I think it's more. I think it's more cynical than that. The think tanks, the red tie wearing.
I was
think
part
tanks
of the Never Trump crowd until I said, "Screw it, let's go black flag."
But I mean, I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about I'm talking about the individuals who are in quote unquote leadership positions in like the Republican Party.
I was mostly just referring to the voters.
Well, sure. I am much more charitable for individuals making their decisions than people who have been in institutional, you know, power.
That's fair.
You know, because there's disparate impact there.
He represents a, you know, kind of shaking of the foundations of the GOP that threatens a lot of...
When Trump kept Bush the third and Clinton the second from being our choice for president, and when he regularly makes people like Jonah Goldberg and Bill Kristol apoplectically angry, it's difficult to not give the guy some props, even if you disagree with a lot of the other stuff that he's doing. You know, when our media is clearly lying about everything, and he popularized the term fake news, and so now you have a large. In fact, I think for people under 40, it's an outright majority of people who just don't. It's not that they just don't trust him; they don't listen to corporate news. And you have this huge flourishing all across the gamut, which is how you get interesting debates and interesting ideas entering the mainstream. And he was a supercharge of that. I'm not going to give him credit for doing all of that, because that sentiment was pre-existing that he just tapped into.
Well, and a lot of that was also just the natural ebb and flow of moving into more of an internet-focused means of communication.
You're completely correct. But to have
Russia,
to have a president do that, is immensely helpful. Right. And I'm not sure if it outweighs the detriments that he's doing. And my version of detriment is going to be completely different than yours about, you know, what he's done or hasn't done. I think
it's also going to be pretty different.
Right. I think we're agreed that the nepotism is disgusting.
Yeah.
The open nepotism. Because like Obama had all of his people marry into the media so they could just be incestuous. But at least he had the class to not like actively promote Javanka to positions that they have no goddamn reason being involved. There is an actual coarseness to Trump that's intentional. And for a lot of especially
he's from New
for
York?
a lot of his especially well, no, it's not just that, because for a lot of his of especially his most fervent supporters, there's a coarseness to them too. And that's okay.
Well, I mean, it's
I mean, like, really, it's not. I don't.
a large section of his support is actually the working class.
Right.
It's the group that realistically, if anybody paid any attention to like the philosophical bearings for a lot of what actual leftism is supposed to be standing for, you know, that these are the people that they're supposed to be out
Right.
to support and out to,
Right.
you know, rally
and
up.
they and that they
and
used
they're
to,
not.
and that they used to be.
Right.
You know, America bipartisanly went super corporatist
The
50 years
labor
ago,
movement
and it's
died.
fucked over. Right, it's fucked over it's fucked over everything. And Trump, in his actions, is not being effectively anti-corporatist, but he's definitely galvanized a type of movement that probably wasn't elsewise on offer in 2016.
He's also he's more anti-corporatist than the Democrats have been in I don't know how long.
But it depends on the Democrat,
Right. Well,
but
generally.
It also
right.
depends on the corporation.
That's true.
Well,
you know,
the fact that even not being entirely anti-corporatist is still enough to be more so than the party that's
right,
supposed to sell
it's
itself.
a third rail in politics.
Yeah.
If you want to do any of them, then all
Yeah.
of the corporate is going to be like, you know, we can't afford that, because then what happens if next year that you know, so I think that for me that would be the reason why is, and then the other thing is that we've networked tribalism into politics, and the way in which American politics was set up, the rules you were supposed to follow, never took that into account. So it really has broken politics, and so now you're getting into the red tribe, which is not just the Republican Party. It's all of these other dissident, formerly underground groups that otherwise would not have seen the light of day, and can get very explosively popular very quickly and get more mobilization than the staid, old, boring, you know, GOP, bow tie wearing GOP can. And you see the exact same thing on the left as well. You have like the hashtag resistance probably has more in real life mobilization just on the strength of their online presence than the Democratic National Convention has at this point. And when that happens, politics starts being, Trump functions like a tribal chief. He wakes up in the morning and he sends out tweets to his supporters and throws shade at his enemies as if he's doing a haka. And so that's, we've seen a networked tribalism happen in American politics. And it's going to break the whole system down. But Trump is a symptom of that as much as a cause.
Sure. Is there a way, I won't say back, but through?
Right. Boogaloo.
No, I've become much more, I guess, nihilistic towards my view on these things, and more and more accelerationism is appearing to be.
I don't think anybody under the age of 40 actually believes that we're not going to get through this without a crisis. I might have double negative in there, but I really don't, because things are too broken and the levers of power are too monopolized by people who either don't have skin in the game or are out of institutional reach of people of the age to actually have to live with these problems for the rest of their lives.
It also sounds like to some extent you've gone over a little bit of the details for how you prevent this discussion that we're seriously this looks like a real thing. A lot of that comes down to having people lay down roots that makes them not want to see that as
community,
valuable.
which we've completely
and family, like
but that's part of
married people with children don't go, man, you know what I think would really fix this? A civil war.
Right. Yeah. Well, but also, and the funny part is it wasn't like hard leftists that destroyed the family and splintered communities in this country. It was capitalism. It was chasing the bottom. Well, I think corporatism. Because when I say capitalism, I don't mean like just the existence of markets means that people can. That's not what I mean.
Well,
I also chasing just
I wouldn't
pure
say that
efficiency.
Capitalism is markets either. I've gone far enough down that rabbit trail.
We're kind of agreed in that regard. In that we turned corporatist, and again, due to the Industrial Revolution, we invented things like birth control that had never existed before. So even if we hadn't changed anything 50 years ago, that's a societal sea change that we still haven't seen the whole ramifications of. So we're still kind of in the dark at this because no one's ever done this before. But we intentionally, or really even unintentionally, we just uncaringly let the communities that America built up over 2 centuries just completely wither and die in the chasing of basically, corporate profits, and that the benefits of that have not accrued to the majority of people. And so that leaves people more open to societal shocks, whether that be interpersonal, which can lead you down the incel path, which we've talked about, or it can be, politically, which leads down the whole radicalization path, which we see large numbers of people our age go into, opposite camps.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out kind of the same thing. We've had it's not just that though, because
it's a lot more than just two sides.
Blue Tribe has you're right, but Blue Tribe has a lot more than just tankies, and I mean it's a whole gamut, and Red Tribe has a whole lot more than just the alt-right as their proto shock troops. It's a whole gamut, but everybody knows whether you're Blue Tribe or Red Tribe. And it's whether or not you can work with those other people that makes you that tribe. And then you
the ones that are in the worst spot are the ones that plant themselves in the orange position, which is too close to the middle of between both.
Well, eventually the middle won't be able to hold. That's what is the thing. Is that
and anyone who tries is going to just make themselves a target to too many people.
Right. As a very loud Yang ganger. I find
is there any other type?
Right. It's really funny seeing the crossroads of that, because it's like, oh, like Yang is a libertarian Trojan horse. And then it's like, and then on the other side, it's like, oh, that's just the nanny state providing more welfare with UBI.
I wouldn't even anybody on the left who would accuse him of being libertarian in the sense of like Libertarian Party has literally no idea what the Libertarian Party even stands for.
Like the fact that he just was able to pull off getting to a debate means that he's a lot more organized than anybody at the Libertarian Party.
You're right. You're right. But also he holds a lot of positions that would be just definitionally authoritarian to most LP libertarians.
Sure.
So
but you're like way in that rabbit hole of libertarian.
That is stuff that I would absolutely consider to be a mainstream libertarian position in terms of what is labeled libertarian
mainstream
in the country.
Libertarian.
Yeah, that's a good.
Well, no, that gives you an idea of where I am. That I have to actually delineate.
Which is why, once again, I said you're way in the rabbit hole of libertarianism.
But I know well enough what they would look at and be like, no, that's too much.
Right.
and he is one of them, and it's funny because the memes that come out of that are amazing. But
sure. Well, I mean, I've told you this before. I think that some type of libertarianism as an end state is good, as in like, we're at the point where we can leave people be and we don't need a large amount of coercion to make things work. Right. I completely disagree in the means of getting there.
Have I described my position on that in terms of being destinationally?
To me, yeah. Okay. And I'm not sure if this podcast here is this
right.
It's
like,
but
it's like that's
anyway.
That's a side road.
Right.
It's a side of the side. But yeah. Anyway,
I think
I do have a something that I think will help make the tribes weaker is literally just switching to ranked choice voting.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that you have to convince them in the first place to give up that power, and it ain't happening.
There's actually three tribes. This isn't my idea. This is from a guy named John Robb, who pretty much everybody should read. He's on Twitter, and he's got a book called Brave New War. That's not really entirely military related. It's about the networkization of society and how it competes within itself to kind of get maximum spread and maximum effect of things.
So it is about war.
Well, kind of. It's not like a purely military book. It's got a much larger application.
It's Russia and Ukraine.
Sure. But he talks about red tribe, blue tribe, and also what he calls gray tribe, which is the status quo, and it is much smaller by numbers, but it has a much more outsized effect.
Yeah.
And that when you're talking about, any solution that would maintain the status, any solution that wouldn't have some type of paradigmatic shift would mean that one, and it would probably just be one of these tribes would subsume and begin to change the way gray tribe worked. And I don't see that happening. I think blue tribe has a better chance of doing it than red tribe does. Just because of the people who make it up and because the way in which they want to work and the things they want to do. But I still don't think it's gonna.
I would argue that they're losing their grip on that just for the time being, slowly though.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right.
So that means that they're going to start growing desperate to do things.
I think everybody is. You know,
well, I know.
What happens? The next 2008 is eventually going to happen. We haven't really fully recovered. There's large sectors of the economy that haven't at all. And in 2008, we weren't networked. You know, people still tried to do Occupy and the Tea Party. And tried to, petition through the hierarchy,
ended up hating each other, even though 80% or more of their.
Well, that's what I said is that a large part of even tankies and even the alt-right, a large part of that is just excessive corporatism in government. If you could fix that, then sure. But the longer this goes on, the bigger a gulf there comes between them, and the more fringe ideas get picked up and mainstreamed within those tribes. So, 10 years from now, things that would be ridiculed today might be outwardly held as completely acceptable. And these things would be diametrically opposed within, the network groups. And also, neither one of them would have outright support for Grey Tribe. So at that point, you've just got like a Lebanon situation
what you're describing
going on,
right now is very, very much what right libertarians have been doing to the Republican Party.
Sure.
Like, a big part of the reason why the LP doesn't get traction is because most of the libertarians that actually matter for anything have been just basically slowly wearing down a lot of positions that have been long held in the Republican Party.
You're right.
So
my point, though, isn't just that it's a wearing down, but that it's being replaced very, very quickly with this network systems that makes it very, very easy for an individual person who may not really be affiliated through money or through time with a normal, regular, what we call political party.
No, I agree. I was just saying this is an example of something that largely mirrors your situation here that has been happening over the past, probably 20 years at least.
And this exact same thing happens on the left
Democrats
as well.
And progressives. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. That progressives have done really probably the best job of anyone in American politics of hollowing out non-progressive.
They've been far more successful than libertarians have been.
Well, I guess hard lefty, because it's hard lefty as opposed to just like your normal progressive dem of really hollowing out. Like the Democratic Socialists of America have completely outsized support because they are a networked group. That has and they do that, and it's in a similar way to like the printing press revolutionizing things, or electricity or fossil fuels. The invention of personalized networking is going to have that same size. We're already seeing it have that same size of effect, but the invention of the printing press was probably the largest spark leading to the wars of religion in Europe.
I mean,
these things almost never happen placidly.
The trouble that they're having now is that while they might have numbers, they don't currently have effective messaging as far as internet culture goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, they
because right now,
get out memed.
I will name the top 3 sources of memes, which are going to be the most effective ways of, spreading information quickly.
Right.
And in order, they are. Guess, 4chan.
Okay.
The Donald.
Okay, so I'd say Reddit in general.
And then the next one is as close as you're going to get to left, and I would argue it's just kind of, you could say Ancapistan, but like arguably I would just say like the libertarian network of pages that blew up.
I think that's actually good.
They got blew up, so they've been fractionated.
No, I think that's actually a good example of being implicitly red tribe and only seeing things from a red tribe perspective. Because memeing things like I
mean, I'm not. MIT literally did a study on this stuff.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying that the strategy of making of culture jamming, basically institutionalized culture jamming, is an insurgency thing.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to break it down and then route around things that are broken down so they can get what they want. The DSA doesn't have
Yang Gang is trying to do the same thing for the left right now.
It is. In fairness, it is. It's because you get cross-pollination back and forth because they are in competition with each other.
Yeah.
the DSA doesn't have to out-mean people because they've got on-the-ground organization and deep pockets, and they've got, attorneys on staff and stuff. And so when they're very much hashtag resistance because their goal is to moralistically put rules in place that only they can follow. And so then only DSA people, you saw this happen. They did it in, I think it was a state Senate race in Chicago in Illinois. And it was an incumbent, and they just blitzed him out of office. And they were like, you're a fucking white male, you're racist, they threw the whole book. They threw the whole book at him, basically. And they froze him out. And it doesn't matter whether they were true or not. They were definitely very effective, and they were able to put like an out and out intersectionalist, super progressive, aggressive progressive in office by using basically a carbon copy of the hashtag resistance book against someone who was supposedly blue tribe, but wasn't sufficiently blue tribe. Yeah. So I think you're right in the sense of like,
and for the record,
you've got these internet places being.
I'm actually not just pulling this out of my butt either.
I don't think you are.
Before saying this, I've actually seen data that like supports these. The only one that I would say is a stretch is trying to put Ancapistan in there, mostly because in true libertarian fashion, most of these sources are very, very largely decentralized. Right. And which some of that comes from Facebook blowing up the biggest libertarian pages.
Networked effects.
So then after that, they came out and said, this is Liberty Memes 2.0, and this is Liberty Memes, 3.0, and this is totally not Liberty Memes.
But that's all Red Tribe stuff because it's all insurgency. Like part of the problem in trying to find a solution for this is that the groups aren't equal. They're not the same. They don't act the same. They don't have the same goals, and they don't behave the same. Right. So it's not going to be enough to like seize the memes of production and then equalize it between the two, because that's going to be implicitly a bigger loss to the Red Tribe insurgency, because that's one of their biggest things is like they can shut down entire college campuses with one sheet of paper saying it's okay to be white. Yeah. Blue Tribe can't do that. They can't. But Blue Tribe can get people blacklisted from speaking there. And show up with organized people that will prevent you from coming. So sharing organizational power would hurt Blue Tribe more. So they're not going to want to do that. Right. But sharing kind of like, mimetic or cultural power would hurt the other one.
Just by the rules of their own like moral matrices, they can't even compete on that level.
Well, and that's what it comes
just
from.
Not an option that they have without actually stepping back to being liberal instead of progressive. Right. Like they literally have to sacrifice some of their own moral, I guess, values to get back to that point.
That's a good point that I probably was going to forget. But like part of the issue that when America became excessively corporatist, I think I've said that like 14 times now, but it really is the root of a lot of our office is that America stopped even caring about or even considering that it did have a unified culture. Yep. And we don't anymore.
The left and the right used to both be liberal in like the truest sense.
In the Enlightenment sense. Yeah.
But then different groups decided that they needed to, differentiate themselves from each other to show.
Power abhors a vacuum, and so when it became about dollar signs more than building up kind of like this this garden of community with it, everything was multifaceted.
Labor movements started to take root for a little while, and then eventually they stopped being useful to the left,
they got supplanted. Yeah, and everything did. There really is not any legacy community organization that still has legs. Right. That feeds in just as much to the incel problem as it does the political one.
I was waiting for that because that's actually the next thing is that is there a way of sort of tying that back into the whole like, so I have this thought of like looking at the Japan example as an extreme of a completely monocultural,
homogenous,
that they've created a community that essentially self-dictates without even really creating laws. Right. It just self-regulates it the way that the community behaves.
In true woke fashion, I would like to suggest that Japan be given back to the natives.
What?
Well, the people that we now understand to be Japanese are actually not the original ethnic group that lived
Yeah, if
there.
you go to Hokkaido, which is the northern island, there's because it's the no, I'm serious. Like, I actually know about this because I told you before this started that I'm not as extremely online as I used to be, and I'm actually reconsidering that because that's actually a relatively new meme, and I knew about that, and I'm kind of mad at myself that I knew about that because I'm like, God, yeah, I'm still way too on the internet now. But no, it's that people, because Japan hasn't had mass immigration, it becomes a touchstone for, oh, you should do this because they're still going to be Japanese, and well, you should take in because they're not having babies and they're all going to, like, Japan's like old as fuck and it's just going to die away. And then somebody came up with the whole, like, well, if you really want to solve Japan's problems, give it back to like the actual Japanese, and just to throw shade. And it had an effect. So that's the thing. To answer your question,
right.
Or actually continue asking.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So having or even less extreme, to an extent than Japan, like you were mentioning Norway, that has a sort of egalitarian sort of point of view. In that it can help with that sort of incel thing, in that your community is no longer just your internet meme lords that are feeding into your degenerateness. But it's actually like someone that knocks on your door and is like, I haven't seen you like go out for groceries in a while. Are you okay?
Part of the trouble with that goes back to Dunbar's number, like we discussed.
Yeah, we did discuss that last night. And yeah, so we can touch on that.
I was actually going to bring that up, so that's really fun.
So the challenge in that does become that since our network has exploded and imploded, in that our network has grown really big through the internet, but also really small interpersonally. So our measure of Dunbar's number is strange.
Yeah, so I think it would be very rare for a person in current America to have interpersonal relationships with anything approaching a Dunbar's number amount of people.
I mean, I keep my Facebook friends list down to less than 150, I believe.
Right, but that's not interpersonal.
Yeah, that's not even really.
No. My point there is that I purposefully don't add people unless there's someone who I think I should keep in contact with because of more of an interpersonal like relationship. I
add everyone who adds me because I have things to promote.
Your identity is so at risk. So very anyway.
Well, anyone that looks like a
different
bot
discussion
is something else. But
no, not even that. But again, that's a discussion for another time.
You don't have anything to steal. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, we need. I've tried to shy away from aughts rather than ises this whole thing. So to just dip my toes in shoulds or anything. America really does need more organic community at pretty much all levels.
I don't think that that's going to happen with the population level and density that we have from most of the places where it's most
not.
important.
Ironically, I think some type of huge fuck-off crisis would be the necessity leading to more community anyways.
But
I'm not trying to promote
does
that.
Indeed decrease the population density.
Right.
So
is that in a lot of ways, America's successed itself to death. We have a 1790s era political system that has somehow lasted for 230 years, which is really kind of a world record. That very rarely happens that it lasts that long.
Well, yeah, and oldest.
Just pure American stubbornness.
No, I think it's a facet of how well it was designed to begin with. But on a long enough timeline, everything breaks, and we're kind of getting to that as well. And so, I mean, if you wanted to design a perfect system from the ground up, you could do that, but that's a lot less difficult than trying to reform the mess that you find yourself in now. I mean, all I would say is that, begin where you are with what you have right now. And just start building organic. And you and I were talking about, the automated garden thing, and even what we're doing right now with the podcast, which will disseminate to, to mostly local people here. And I think that there are a lot of bottom up things that Americans can do. I also think this goes assortively. I think that the blue tribe, red tribe thing need not have violent borders if you do it well, because you can assortively, I think a good end result would be to have like 80 to 150, that Dunbar's number of people, that would then have its own network to try and get those network effects to get what it wants done collectively. But then inside that group, you don't have to use that because it can be very abusive to be inside of a network group. If you have things to promote, then all you're doing is just promoting. You're not actually having organic contact with people. And on the other end of that, it's just consume product, get excited for new product. And so it can have an immense effect.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get rid of it because I think the benefits, if you do it right, outweigh the costs, but they don't right now, which means we're not doing it correctly. Yeah. And I think that starts with, first off, it just starts with understanding it. You summed it up better than I could have. That we have an outsized network growth, and we've just completely atrophied our interpersonal. So we're in this weird situation right now where no one is actually getting what they need. We're very, very few. Because, like I said, there are some people who can make that network effect work, but it's a minority.
There's also just a lot of people who are just opting to step out of social media as it has existed for like the last 8 to 10 years anyway, just because it's healthier.
That's me to a T.
Well,
I've got Twitter for basically memes.
I mean, you even have people whose like livelihood is this monster that is social media and current events and all of these things, who say this is so like just exhausting that I have to step away from this for a month of every year. So I mean, it's, and then even then some of them, they can't afford to step away from it. So then like you can like plot out a graph where you watch them get increasingly more like manic or whatever, like just crazy.
That's what I mean by
abusive. Which is everybody's favorite, Bernie supporter, Tim Pool.
Yeah, he's straight up addicted to it.
He is losing his crap.
That reminds me of they did a study of like Reese's monkeys, little baby Reese's monkeys, and they had
do they have peanut butter inside?
I wish.
Okay. But, that would have made them a lot more yummy.
I think it's like Reese's, but I'm from Oklahoma, y'all, so like everything comes out dry.
Sorry, guys.
Reese's monkeys, and they basically took the mother away, and they had one like wire mother standing with milk and one with felt. And the babies would cling to the felt because that was what was they wanted the love and the affection, and they would like run over and get milk, and they would run back to comfort mama. And they did another study. I say they scientists, but where they would take babies.
It's the same they that did surgery on
exactly. It's just one they. Actually, that's what if we could find that they and somehow corral them, all of our problems would go away. We need to find they. But it was a mama bird, and the baby birds were honking for food, and they created like a super baby bird whose mouth was brighter red and who squawked louder, and the mom, because bird brain, just fed the fake bird, and the other bird, her actual children would have died. It's called super fuck me, now I'm gonna forget super
technical term, super fuck me.
So from your mind's perspective, it's not there's no real difference. It's like super not senses, but like reactions to it, that things are so in some cases defined to be addictive, but so overt and so much like, so super, so above and beyond, like plus ultra from the way our minds were evolved to do, that you have to take that into account. I'm firmly convinced that if you took like a Leave It to Beaver family and you threw them into 2019, you'd start to see a lot of weird shit happen, because human, like their mental firmware is the same as ours, and you're putting them in something that was that's very, very novel, that no one's ever experienced before. So I'm confident that this will get solved. I just don't know if it's not going to take a big
some sort of crisis or war, something.
Touching on something you just mentioned there, there's actually been some stuff that I've seen suggested by particularly, I believe it was Jonathan Haidt, around brain development. Is something that Santiago and I touched on a little bit. But they're showing that there are pretty significant, like measurable decreases in brain volume just through very recent, like not even going back 100 years, like there's already like noticeably smaller brains that are coming out with people.
You know what that makes me remember or think of There was when people first started going into factories, they lost a lot of height.
Yep.
Because they were working very early, and the amount of nutrition they were getting went down because we had just suddenly invented cities, like big cities,
Right.
and we didn't know how to do them. And so people extrapolated that out, and they were like, "Holy shit! The people of 2100 are going to be 3 feet tall."
Yep.
Because and that didn't happen because we affected, but that for the people in the middle of that, life in many ways just sucked ass, and so we were finally generationally able to get that. So when I view that, I'm like, hey, if we continue on our current, we're just gonna stupefy ourselves. So that I don't think we're going to.
The trouble with that though is there is no way that I think that you'd be able to make the case that that's going to do it across the globe, though, because there are a lot of places that actually don't have the same like selection pressures and stimuli that you're seeing.
Super stimulus. That's what it's called. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like there are a lot of places that aren't getting just absolutely wrecked by the amount of internet usage,
Right.
which is a big part of what they're assuming is causing a lot of this.
I'd agree.
Now
it goes back to what I said. We beat the game so hard that we're fighting our own minds.
Yeah.
Now, to that same note, though, it seems like there's also a pretty significant increase in, if I'm remembering right, like neural pathways that are being found in these smaller brains.
Okay.
So they're not sure what it means yet, right? But
Just becoming dense.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Instead of going like big brain alien, we're actually just gonna have like a neutron star brain.
we're gonna be like the chimpanzee version of brains, where it feels like you're holding something made of wood, but it's actually the brain.
That would explain the paradox of why we don't find life. Is alien life is they discover social media and they just turn into memes.
Our final step of evolution is
everybody is a meme supercomputer in 2150.
Yeah.
This is your future.
Transhumanism.
Was there anything else that we could touch on? I mean, I think that
the problem is that there's always too much that we can touch on.
Right, yeah.
Well, there was one thing in particular that you mentioned to me before this most recent, I guess, request for doing recording and stuff, and that was I guess regarding like crude humor. And,
oh, right.
Yeah. So
that might be an entirely separate podcast. But,
okay.
I wouldn't mind.
But
maybe the denizens of the deep.
Right. Along with at least this conversation, I do think that I guess I've sort of been trying to like pull this back into a thing, and so back even more into the thing that this podcast does is I talk to a lot of people specifically in the music industry, but that is actually the problem that the music industry in Oklahoma and like the Oklahoma Metro or OKC Metro is trying to deal with, is the fact that there's a lot of people and no one seems to see that there's local music here. Mm-hmm. And so in that same sense, the music scene is trying to create a community of people and so we're sort of seeing a micro form of what we would like to happen, or at least what would the underserved minority that's very angry and alone.
So I've figured out your problem.
Go ahead.
You just need the Oklahoma music industry version of the Koch brothers.
Gross. That would suck.
Tell me I'm wrong, though.
Would that be the Dr. Pepper brothers?
Yes.
This part of the world?
That made me feel bad.
Can one of them be dead?
That's a good place to start.
Really, all you need them for is the money. So
right.
But so, I mean, I guess as long as
somebody
has to be in
If you're talking about local dead guys that would give you money, I think the T. Boone Pickens group would be a good. But I really like that. I really do. I mean, humans are community building animals, and you can either build like progenerative or degenerative communities, and I feel like with the internet, because it is so much a wild west, it's easier to build degenerative communities than it is generative ones, and that's a large part of what we're seeing as well. So I don't really know, because I don't have a whole lot of experience with that. I'm getting to the point in my own life that I've got the resources and I've got the willingness now that I'm really starting to take the first steps to try and build effective communities just with, that I do in my free time. And I really don't have a whole lot of answers for that. I feel like I've very well figured out the problem.
There are risks inherent to trying to make that transition anyway.
You're
Because
completely correct.
I've literally watched an old school B-board, old fag transition into being the wokest of woke.
Right.
Like the problem doesn't have a clear-cut answer. Kind of going back to some of the things.
You're completely correct. There's costs associated with community. That's why people are so willingly. That's why they're so willing to take a break from them or just to leave them entirely, because again, the costs, you have to pay the cost whether you get the benefits or not. At its best, the benefits far outweigh it, but you have to pay those costs either way.
You just reminded me of the opening lyrics to a new favorite song of mine.
You have to show me afterwards, because you find music that I like that I would have never found. So
Sable recently yoked off of Facebook. And part of that was the explosive nature of what social media has done. So
I mean, I've been slowly doing the same thing. I don't know if you've noticed, but
it's funny. I'm really
not cranking out memes like I used to.
Really happy
never mind
that I've been off Facebook for as long as I have been.
Yeah.
But it took a crisis to put me there.
Right.
It was not something I would have chosen to happen to me to do that. So.
The filthy capitalist in me is what made me start to kind of step back from it.
I mean, it's just, when I'm at my most cynical, I think that the thing that community should do in this country is prepare for an inevitable crisis and take advantage of it when it happens. But I'm not normally that cynical, so I think it's more charitable. And I enjoy watching. And this really is something that, as my cohort, and I'm a younger millennial, so I'm sure this has been going on for 20 years that I didn't know about because I was just too young and inexperienced to see this. But as my age of cohort has kind of gotten into their mid to late 20s now, to watch all of these different, community building programs to happen. And then, to have the ability to network with each other, but for the onus to be on that, that literally doing the grunt work of building community. And I'm like, we're all going to make it.
Yeah.
We might hate each other. It might take an actual crisis, but we're all going to. So that's the biggest piece of an answer that I have.
Sure.
So
I mean, I guess if you feel like something bad is going to happen, at least start forming a community so that it's there whenever
I would argue
happen.
This might make neither of you happy, but I would argue that the woke progressivism that all three of us seem to be complaining about to some degree or another here is an attempt at exactly that.
No, actually, you're completely right.
Yeah.
You're entirely correct.
So the issue there is just focusing on things that bring people together as opposed to the things that make you different, which brings me back to Jonathan Haidt.
The best version of things that bring people together.
Right.
And it's very easy to bring people together to fuck over that other person because how dare they?
Turns out whenever the things that you're focusing on in terms of differences are things that people have no control over.
Right.
Yeah, you're literally doing nothing but making things worse for everybody.
Right.
So there is no scenario in which that comes out profitable for people across the board.
Well, and also that goes into the fact that the human hindbrain is still living in caves, and America is extremely novel for that hindbrain to live in. There are very few nations that have ever existed that are more multicultural than the United States is, and our hindbrain didn't evolve. I'm not making a moral judgment on this. I'm just saying
you should read "Civilized to Death" by Chris Ryan that just came out. Shit. Okay.
Yeah. One of the most useful tools, insofar as what I've read up on to this point for getting past a lot of these hurdles, has been religion, though. As much as I know that you're not a fan of that idea.
I think every society needs a religion, and that the hashtag resistance is its own secular.
I was going to say we're in
religion.
the middle of trying to produce a secular religion right now, and it's doing terrible things. It is doing terrible things
in the same way that religion has done terrible things.
Sure,
so,
but the common denominator there is the people.
Too many people talking all at once.
I was just going to say the common denominator is people are terrible. So
people can be terrible. Every single person has the capacity to be terrible.
That goes back to the quote, "Everything that is human is familiar to me." So
the version the version I heard of this, and this comes from a guy who's like outright reactionary, so take this from what you will, but he was like, any any goodness that humans have ever invented or hold came from hell, in that it took an enormous amount of suffering to eke out any amount of that. So on the one hand, the fact that, we can sit here and have this conversation, discuss all these things means that, things aren't, really that bad. I mean, they have the capacity.
That doesn't mean that they're going the direction that we'd like them to be.
Exactly. It doesn't mean, because people have seen crises coming before and have not been able to forestall them. That has to be one of the worst feelings you could possibly have.
Which is
thanks,
what we're
fuels.
in.
Well, exactly. Yeah, everybody, everybody kind of feels that way. I think that there is some stuff that
I missed something.
That there's
climate change.
There's, right.
I didn't hear what you
There's
said.
this slow rolling, sometimes terrifyingly fast rolling series of interrelated conflicts that are kind of washing up with ever increasing frequency and furor that threatens to wash away a lot of stuff, maybe even stuff that we didn't want to, because everybody wants some shit to be washed away. That's the scary part, is everybody has at least a little bit that they're like, but
be too bad.
Exactly. But then if it takes everything away, you're like, no, fuck, right. I think even a lot of it is that if good community replaces what came before it, and there is a lot worth replacing about current America that might have even worked well previously, but clearly doesn't now. Yeah. And that on its own merits means that it bears replacing. So
I think that's a good.
Yeah, that's about what I've got.
Let's start this direction. Terry, plug your stuff.
I'm not doing anything on media anymore. So,
right, but you have a business that you
but I don't know that I want to associate that with anything that I just said. I told you I'm purposefully trying to step away from this stuff to keep that separate from all of the crazy things that I've previously said online.
Fair enough. It's up to you if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think, okay.
I think that the people that listen to this, few though they may be, are good people.
Yeah, but I've already had hardcore anarcho-communists try to dox me and stuff.
I hate when hardcore anarcho-communists try and dox me.
I definitely have feelings of sympathy for that.
Yeah.
Is the conditioned response?
Yeah.
I don't.
That does suck though. That's because that's that fringe online thing that just.
I mean, I'm pretty positive that the particular individual in question wouldn't have been able to do anything at all.
Were they local? Because that makes it worse.
No, they weren't local.
Okay.
One, they were broke because anarcho-communists.
Lol.
Sorry, but also my response was I just showed them a photo of a rifle, and then they kind of went quiet.
Happens.
So,
I mean, I'll plug my stuff. What the thing that really kind of turned or really capstoned just how good of a year this has been for me personally is I'm working in off-grid solar now.
Hell yeah.
It's called Off-Grid Enterprises. It's out of Norman, so I'm about to move down there so I don't have an hour commute, because that would suck joy out of my day very quickly. Just to start and again to start seeing all of the kinds of communities that are really taking the onus on them, because it's not just crazy cult into the world people who do this. It's to really start being responsible for all of their energy needs so that they can build on that on completely their own terms.
Yeah.
And to really to watch that and to be a part of that. And again, networked effect, because this is how you market in 2019. But to have something that's just beneficial, so you're not really beating anybody down when you do that.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I find a network effect that doesn't have an enemy. And that's fun to do, because it's not red tribe, blue tribe. We'll work with anybody.
Yeah.
And so that was really what kind of germinated my idea of how you could build community and then layer the network effect on top of that. So life is good.
Literally just making energy happen.
Yeah.
On its own.
Yeah.
It's great. Thank you guys for doing with me.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm Santiago Ramones.
Terry Fortune.
And I'm Corey Hall.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music, and you can leave comments and reviews on all of the podcast stuff, which you can find pretty much everywhere that you can find podcasts. You can leave me money through those podcast platforms. anchor.fm/Santiago Ramones, or through Bandcamp or whatever, however it is that you want to support me. But it's great to know that there are people that listen. And so please leave your comments and responses and all that junk. I was in the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong.